How are y'all? Wyrm here. So it was a long day and night for all of us during FanFest, and I'm pretty much exhausted, as is everybody else, and we still have a day to go. But enough about that for now. The Endwalker full trailer came out during FanFest, and everybody was absolutely fully excited for it, especially myself, because it gave us a whole new wealth of information in terms of what this expansion is going to be about, who the main characters are going to be, what the main locations are going to be, and what the final days are kind of going to look like. So we've got a lot of information to actually go through, and I almost wasn't going to make this, mainly because everybody's done an analysis of this trailer. But in my usual way, I don't want to analyze just the features and stuff like that. I want to analyze it from a lore perspective. So I've got my encyclopedias, I've got my video here. Let's analyze this video from a lore perspective. Now, I'm not going to go over the stuff that I already went through in the last trailer. I'm really going to focus on the new elements that we've actually seen. As you can see, it starts off in the same way it did in the previous trailer, although the lyrics and the song have changed. It's gone to a higher quality. They changed the overall lyrics and the overall quality of the lyrics as well, so they actually sound a lot better. Well, as you can see, the Warrior of Light is on the moon as usual, strolling along. Now, I'm just going to quickly touch on this. You see Alizé is fighting the Void Sent in La Nocia. Now, this actually makes a lot more sense to us now, because we know this is definitely tied to the final days. These monsters appeared as a result of the final days, so there's literally fights breaking out all over the planet at this stage. So this is why this is happening. And as you see, the Warrior of Light steps in. There's nothing really new in this scene at all. We have to skip ahead to the next part where we get something new. So you see Alpha now, and then it cuts to this scene here where there's literally monsters and Void Sent raining from the sky. This is something very visual. Now you look at this, there's a tower here, and you see these monsters and these monsters flying around. These are all Void Sent, but there's more and more of them just raining from the sky. So this is definitely part of the final days. Literally, it's just raining monsters. But I'll go into a theory I have in a second. But mainly I wanted to go through here. This is a part I didn't notice. These are the dancer statues in Raz-at-Han. So this is Raz-at-Han that's actually getting attacked. So the statues have been destroyed here, and I'm not exactly sure what sort of magic this is, but then you see our lovely new dragon friend and Estinian on top. Now he mows the ground with them, and then you see Estinian jumps up and does his massive meteor dive, or whatever it's called, hits the ground, and then Vrtra lands beside him. So he already says his name is Vrtra. Now, Vrtra is part of the first brood of Midgardsormr. Midgardsormr had a brood of 7 children, and Vrtra is actually one of them. Vrtra and Raz-at-Han, I think his name is, they're the 2 members of the brood that we actually haven't seen at this point. So Vrtra is the 6th that we've seen. So only Raz-at-Han is the last one we haven't seen. Now, we don't really know much about Vrtra. He is not in the encyclopedias. His information is not online. So I've just done a bit of research into the overall character of what Vrtra is, and pretty much the name as well, which actually adds some hints to it. Now, considering this fight is actually happening in Raz-at-Han in Thavnair, it actually lends a hint mainly based on Vrtra's name. Now, Vrtra is actually a name that's based in Hinduism, so that has an Indian influence. And since Raz-at-Han and Thavnair has a lot of Indian references and influence, that makes me think that Vrtra has actually been residing and living in Thavnair the entire time, which is why we've never seen him in Eorzea. But I think when we all go there, we end up meeting up with Vrtra, or Tiamat actually introduces us to Vrtra. But Vrtra and Estinian are fighting alongside each other, or it just seems like Vrtra has probably just realized the whole world's coming to an end. I may as well just fight alongside the people trying to stop it. But as I said, unfortunately, we don't have much information on Vrtra. I mean, he is an enigma in and of himself. Unfortunately, the first brood, we don't really have as much information on any of them. Even those we do know about, we barely know anything about them. And we'll have to wait until Endwalker launches before we actually learn more about this gigantic, glorious dragon Vrtra. But you can tell he's powerful. And then it cuts to our lovely friend Fan Daniel, still burning whatever he's burning there, and I think it's confirmed now that this is definitely a tower that they're actually residing in Garlemald. I speculated on that in the last trailer, but I think it's definitely confirmed now. But the primary difference is this. Now, if you actually saw my last video, or I'll actually just cut to my live reaction of this scene itself.
New song.
It's different.
This music slaps.
It's different.
There's new stuff. I looked away for a second and I thought it was going to come.
Oh.
It's in a different angle.
That's a cipher.
It's a scythe! It's a scythe!
It's like,
So yeah, I was very, very excited, and honestly I still am. We only had this detail, but it was actually flipped, and we didn't have the blade at this side. So in the last trailer, this side was actually flipped around the other side, so we couldn't see the blade of it, which is why it was so hard to actually recognize it. But now we know. Now, as we can see, this is the same stuff from the last trailer. Garlemald is burning away. Fandaniel has a few extra words to say, just saying everything's in motion, yada yada yada. Fandaniel, your usual. Zenos is pretty bored with himself at the moment, he's just watching things burn. And then it cuts to Thancred and Urianger, and they are walking around Raz-at-Han. Now what's happening here at the moment is they've actually been looking around, and it looks like Raz-at-Han was actually spared this new final days up until this point. So they got there and everything was peaceful by the looks of it. But then all of a sudden everything breaks down, and then the attack ends up happening with monsters raining out of the sky, which leads to the scene that we saw with Vrtra and Istinia. So we zoom out from Thavnir and Raz-at-Han, and then we go to a place I actually wasn't expecting to see, but I hoped we would. Old Sharlayan. Now, if you're familiar with the lore of Final Fantasy XIV, Sharlayan has a major part to play in it, even though we haven't seen it. They're a major power, although they don't really flex it. They have vast knowledge, more knowledge than most other nations combined. And as you can see, there's this massive library here. Now it cuts down to this hidden library in the depths of Old Sharlayan, where it cuts to Grahatiya. Now Grahatiya is looking at some sort of book there and stating that this star has many more secrets to unfold. So more than likely he's researching the final days. More importantly, he's researching where Hydaelyn is, or where Zodiac is, and what part they have to play in this. Because as we already know, Endwalker is going to fulfill their storylines. It's going to complete them entirely. So it's likely he's looking for information on likely how to contact Hydaelyn. If anybody knows how to contact them, the Sharlayans definitely would. Now he wishes us good luck. We zoom out, and then we go to this scene in the Sharlayan Forum. Now, if you are wondering who this person was who Y'shtola ends up having a particular grievance with, he's the head of the Forum of Sharlayan, and this forum is actually the leadership of Sharlayan. Well, they don't really have a massive leadership, but these are the most influential people in Sharlayan society. But if you're wondering who this person is, I'm going to try and pronounce his name properly. It's Fortunat Leviur. Now, Fortunat Leviur is the father of Alisaie and Alphinaud, and he is one of the sons of Louisoix Leviur. Now, we all know who Louisoix Leviur is, and we all know who Alphinaud and Alisaie is. Now, this character we haven't actually seen in Final Fantasy XIV yet, so I'm actually happy he's appeared. I'm not a pretty big fan of him, mainly because he's a massive pacifist, but here's a little breakdown of him so far. I actually have my encyclopedia here, so I'm just going to read from it, just to kind of give you a little bit of touch of exactly who this person is. The eldest son of Archon Louisoix Leviur, Fortunat is a powerful member of the Forum. He has carried a deep respect of Sharlayan's founding father, Nurkreft Nurkreftson, throughout all of his 40 years. Eschewing war as a pursuit of barbarians alone, and seeking advancement through wisdom and reason. As such, the Wildwood Elezen oft disagreed with his father, particularly when the latter established the Circle of Knowing, for the specific purpose of safeguarding Eorzea's future. Now, if you're not familiar with the Circle of Knowing is the organization that the Scions of the Seventh Dawn became after 1.0. Nonetheless, Fortunat respects people's rights to make their own decisions, and did not attempt to bar the way when his sire and children wished to leave for Eorzea. As with the rest of his house, Fortunat is a talented mage. He is also a formidable intellect, and can read learned discourses at nigh unequaled speed. Now, that's a very simple explanation for him, but I'll try and actually go into more depth with him. Now, he actually makes his main appearance in the FF14 story in what you'd call New Sharlayan, which is located in the Dravadian hinterlands, or it was years ago. Now, this civilization in New Sharlayan in the Dravadian hinterlands is where Idleshire is now. It was actually a burgeoning civilization, and it was kind of like an off-branch of Sharlayan. It was a second Sharlayan city, and it was actually prospering until the point the Garleans invaded Eorzea and took over Alamigo. They saw this as a severe warning sign, and the Sharlayans are very pacifist. They don't like war, they prefer wisdom, they prefer talking, they prefer peace. So what they did is, after the Garleans actually took over Alamigo, they sent emissaries to Garlemald to try and broker a peace. They even tried to parley on behalf of the Eorzean alliance. Well, it didn't really exist at the time, but they tried. But the Garleans weren't having any of it, so they always went back empty-handed. As a result of this, Fortunaut he was a person of severe influence in the Forum, but over all of the people in this Sharlayan town in general. So he convinced them and the Forum that it was time to cut their losses and just go back to Old Sharlayan. So he's the one that instigated the evacuation of New Sharlayan in the Dravadian hinterlands to go back to Old Sharlayan. That's why it's empty, mainly because of him. He does not like fighting, he does not agree with fighting, he does not agree with such actions. So, if you're wondering why the Dravadian hinterlands are empty of any Sharlayans beside Matoya, there's the guy to blame. Now, it looks like he's still in his pacifist ways, because in this trailer he states that he's not going to get Sharlayan involved with the actual situation that's happening, even though it's literally the end of the world happening. He's still content for the Sharlayans to I'll actually quote him here. As Sharlayans, it is our task to observe, to chart the course of history, not to change it. So that tells you he preferred to let history just play out. He doesn't want to play a part in it. He wants to sit there along with the Sharlayans and do what they've always done and document it. Now, as you can see, Yerstola is not having any of this. She is a scion of the Seventh Dawn. She's there to defend Eorzea and Hydaelyn itself. She smacks her staff down, it makes a huge ring, and then we cut to Zenos with his beautiful, beautiful new armor and his absolutely stunning new gun scythe. Now, I've already went into this in my last video today. He has a gun scythe. The Reaper doesn't have a gun scythe. Now, I'm cutting to this part here. It only stays a glimpse for a second. So we look at the moon, we look at Fandaniel, and you still see everything is raining down. So these monsters are still raining down from the sky. Now, I have a theory on this, because the moon is involved. Now, what involves the moon, monsters, and them raining down from the sky? If you've played Final Fantasy VIII, you'd know this is a phenomenon called the lunar cry. The lunar cry is a phenomenon that happens every once in a while, but can also be triggered by a particular device. The lunatic Pandora is a giant crystal. But in essence, the monsters pool on one side of the moon. They pool up, they gather, until they reach a critical mass, and then they erupt towards the planet that the moon is orbiting. And they rain all over the planet. I think that's similar to what's happening here. I think that's a lunar cry. I think that's how their final days are coming across. Now, I think this mainly because of this scene that's about to come up. And then we cut to the moon, and then this scene happens. So the Warrior of Light and this monster breaks out of the ground. Now, if you're wondering what this monster is, this monster only appears once in Final Fantasy XIV, and it appears in the Amaroth dungeon. Its name is the First Beast. Now, it's represented and called the First Beast because I think this is likely one of the first beasts that actually conjured themselves as a result of the ancient Ascians' misuse of their magical abilities, or the lost control of their magical creation abilities. So this is the first beast that was likely ever created by them, and these things probably multiplied like frickin' locusts and just overran the world. So this thing attacks the Warrior of Light, doesn't really get very far, and it's on the moon. We slice it in half, done and dusted. But the fact that this thing is walking around the moon tells me that these things are everywhere. My guess is these things are all over the moon, and these things are probably just going to pool together and help with the lunar cry. Or they're probably just like guard dogs at this point. The Ascians probably created them just to monitor the perimeter or something. You never know. So he cuts him aside. I love the new, there's little subtle changes to the armor. The color is changed, the sword is changed, and the shield is slightly changed as well. It's nice shining light, but I love this new image. It's absolutely beautiful. Flips over, and then the trailer ends as the last trailer ended, with the logo, Endwalker is coming. So that's it, everyone. A full lore analysis of the FF14 Endwalker full trailer. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you've been enjoying FanFest so far. I always say to the people in the FedEU, and I say it to my friends, that fan events like FanFest are better when people are together. So if you have any friends or anything like that in the game, or just friends you want to get into Final Fantasy XIV, rope them into watching FanFest with you. It's a great way of making friends and bringing new friends into the game itself. So go on, enjoy it, and hopefully we get a lot of good news tomorrow, but we're also going to get a lot of entertainment in the Primal concert, which I'm definitely looking forward to. Anyway, all, that's everything I had so far. I'm pretty much exhausted. I want to get another long nap in, and probably another nap after that, before we actually stay up all night all over again in Europe to watch day 2 of FanFest. Thanks all, and as always, have a good one.